used to believe that if you showed up every day, did your job the right way, and stayed consistent, the rewards would eventually follow. And that belief wasn't naive, it was learned. It was taught in practices, reinforced by coaches, proven at lower levels where effort and performance actually lined up with opportunity. You play better, you earn more trust, you work harder, you get more chances. Simple, logical, fair. And when you reach the WNBA, you bring that belief with you, assuming the highest level would be the purest version of that system. But over time, something starts to feel off. Not loud, not dramatic, just subtle enough to make you pause. You notice that the same effort doesn't always lead to the same outcomes, that two players can do similar things, produce similar results, and still walk away with very different rewards. And at first, you tell yourself you're overthinking it, that there must be details you're missing, that the system knows something you don't, but the pattern keeps repeating, and that's when the uncomfortable realization begins to form. That reward in this league isn't only about what you do on the court, it's about how easily you fit into the story being told around you. And once you see that, you can unsee it. When you first sense that imbalance, your instinct is to look inward. You ask yourself if you need to be better, sharper, louder, quieter, something. You replay games in your head. You study film. You convince yourself that the solution must be more effort because that's what you've always been taught. And sometimes that works. Sometimes improvement does lead to recognition, but other times it doesn't. And that's when the confusion starts because you're doing everything right. You're showing up prepared, you're executing your role, you're sacrificing when asked, yet the reward feels inconsistent. Trust doesn't always grow with performance. Opportunity doesn't always expand with reliability. And the strangest part is that nothing is ever said out loud. There's no explanation for why certain players get more grace, more patience, more narrative protection. You're just expected to feel it, adjust to it, and keep moving. That quiet expectation becomes one of the hardest parts of the league, learning how to exist in a system that doesn't always explain its decisions, but still expects you to perform as if it does. Eventually, you stop looking at single moments and start seeing the pattern underneath them. It's not one decision or one game that creates the feeling, it's repetition. It's watching how quickly some mistakes are forgiven while others linger. It's noticing how certain performances are amplified while others quietly pass by. It's realizing that reward in this league isn't always about production alone, but about comfort, familiarity, and narrative alignment. Some players are allowed to grow in public. Others are expected to be polished from day one. Some are given space to struggle. Others feel like every misstep carries extra weight. And once you recognize that, it changes how you process everything. You become more aware of how differently similar actions are interpreted. You see how reward can show up as patience, opportunity, or silence, and how the absence of those things can be just as loud. So that awareness doesn't make you angry right away, it makes you thoughtful. Because now you understand that the system isn't broken, it's selective. And learning how that selectivity works becomes just as important as learning the game itself. That's when you realize reward doesn't always mean points, minutes, or contracts. Sometimes it shows up in ways that are much quieter, but far more powerful. It's the benefit of the doubt after a bad night. It's patience when things don't go smoothly. It's being trusted to play through mistakes instead of being pulled after the first one. It's whose struggles get framed as growth and whose struggles get framed as failure. Those things don't appear on stat sheets, but they shape careers. And once you notice that, you understand why two players can work just as hard and still feel like they're being valued very differently. One gets space to evolve, the other gets pressure to be perfect. And that difference changes how you play, how you think, and how safe you feel making decisions on the court. Because confidence isn't just internal, it's built by how much room you're given to be human. Living inside that imbalance does something to you over time, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, internal way. You start carrying an extra layer of awareness into every moment. Every decision feels heavier. You think twice before taking risks, not because you're scared, but because you know the margin for error isn't the same for everyone. You start asking yourself whether it's better to play free and risk consequences or play safe and limit yourself. That internal negotiation becomes constant. And while the outside world might still see confidence, inside you're doing mental math just to stay steady. The hardest part is that you can't openly talk about it without being misunderstood. If you say something, it can sound like complaining. If you stay quiet, it can feel like acceptance. So most of the time, you carry it alone. And that isolation, that sense of knowing the rules aren't equal, but still being expected to perform like they are, is one of the most exhausting parts of the job. At some point, you realize that fighting the system head on isn't what keeps you in it. Understanding it does. That doesn't mean you stop believing in fairness or that you lower your standards. It means you get smarter about where you invest your energy. You start focusing less on how things should work and more on how they actually do. You learn to separate what you can control from what you can't. You stop chasing validation that was never guaranteed and start building confidence that isn't dependent on external reward. That shift is quiet, but it's powerful. Because once you stop measuring yourself by uneven standards, you regain something, important clarity. You play with intention instead of tension. You compete without constantly checking how every move will be perceived. And in a league where pressure is constant, that internal steadiness becomes its own form of reward. Looking at it now, I don't see this realization as bitterness or disappointment. I see it as growth. And understanding that the WNBA doesn't reward everyone the same way didn't make me weaker, it made me more aware. It taught me to separate my value from the system around me, to stop expecting fairness, to look the same for everyone, and instead focus on being excellent within my own lane. That lesson extends far beyond basketball, because in life, in careers, in relationships, rewards are rarely equal, even when effort is. And the people who last aren't always the loudest or the most celebrated. They're the ones who learn how to stay steady inside an uneven system without losing themselves. If you've ever felt like you were doing everything right and still not being rewarded the same way, know this: your work still matters, your growth still counts. And awareness is not defeat, it's power. If this perspective resonated with you, stay with this channel, subscribe. Because here we talk about the parts of the game that don't show up on the scoreboard, but shape everything else.